This is me. I'm one of the psychotherapists here at Uprise, and I'm happy to support anyone in any way, or if you have any questions about this particular topic, feel free to reach out and contact me through Uprise. Feel free to post questions as we go. I'm always happy to kind of stop and check in. And also, if you just have anything to share that is relevant to the topic, I'm sure, everyone in the chat will appreciate that. So we're in this situation at the moment, a lot of us. I realize that we've all had different scenarios depending on, which city we've been living in and what's been going on. Some people are just jumping at the chance to be social, can't wait to get out and about. For some of us, it's a little more of a slow and kind of cautious process. So, we are all in this boat together, and there are a lot of other people out there that probably feel similar to the way you feel. But, we kind of, I guess, are operating in that awareness that not everybody's necessarily on the same page with what we're ready to do, and we all want to support each other. Being vulnerable and acknowledging where you're at and what feels good is, really helpful. We are trying to rebuild relationships and rebuild the community and get back out there and make contact because, hey, if not now, when? At some point, we have got to do this. So, this program, it applies to any situation, even if we haven't just been coming out of lockdown. But I think it's maybe extra relevant at the moment because, maybe after a bit of time in seclusion or just not reaching out as much, maybe our saboteurs are kind of like extra present. And maybe also we've had time to reflect on things and how they do come out in social environments. So saboteurs are things like stickler, sticking to the rules, being people pleaser, hypervigilant, cautious about scenarios, being restless, always kind of jumping from one thing to the next, controlling, avoiding. There's a lot of different types of avoiding. There's actual avoidance of, like procrastination, or there's, avoidance of conflict. And then there's also avoidance of like, the one associated with restlessness, which is like, how can I just keep myself busy so I don't have to face, my own feelings about impending doom or whatever else. The hyperachiever, wanting recognition, the victim, and the hyper-rational. Now, how do these, we've talked before about how these kind of hold us back in our personal journey. But I guess I'm going to acknowledge today some of the ways that they get in the way in our friendships, in our relationships, in really in any kind of relationship. Things like stickler, controller, hypervigilant, these saboteurs come forward when we don't feel safe. A lot of these saboteurs have to do with safety, but, these ones in particular are, really relating to wanting to keep everyone safe in a situation, wanting to keep yourself safe. And a lot of the time, it's very well-meaning, right? We want to make sure that everybody is taken care of and that, nothing's going to happen to anyone. And I guess what we're acknowledging is that sometimes maybe it can be a little disempowering. Sometimes we arrive to that place, for example, when our children are young, we kind of tell them what's good and bad, what's safe and what's not, and, don't touch the flame kind of a thing. And then at what point do we kind of have to let them become empowered through making their own decisions and potentially sometimes making their own decision? So, I guess if we can acknowledge that these are our saboteurs, then we can find ourselves in any particular moment in a social setting, in a, setting with our kids or our friends, questioning, okay, is this my saboteur jumping in the driver's seat, or is this actually an appropriate amount of caution for this scenario? Um, when it comes to people pleasing, this is another way that we can potentially disempower people around us, right? Always wanting to take care of everyone. I've got a bit of the stereotype of the Jewish grandma in me. That's kind of how I grew up, and I've definitely incorporated a lot of that into who I am. And I acknowledge that sometimes people need to be empowered by getting up and doing things themselves. I've experienced situations where, someone was kind of in the people pleasing seat and they were living with someone with depression, and they found themselves constantly wanting to care for that person, wanting to do anything for them. Oh, you're not feeling good? I'll bring you breakfast in bed. Let me care for you. And that's a beautiful thing, to be that selfless and to want to support somebody. But at some point, are we potentially making the situation worse because that person is not forced to sort of get out of bed and make the bed and make it happen themselves and get some food and empower themselves. And then there are, other scenarios where maybe because of a people pleasing tendency, let's say the type of people pleasing that's associated with avoidance. So we're talking about kind of the avoider pleaser combo. Maybe I've spent this whole time completely suffering because I never wanted to tell my partner that I hate raw onions. And every night I'm, sick at night with the raw onions. And then I tell them and I find out that they were only putting them in because they thought I loved them, because I always say, I love this so much. There's just a lot of situations like this where maybe we need to check in. Is it really worth us, not being authentic or not putting out clear boundaries? Sometimes in a work environment, we can have those work relationships where we, in the beginning, say yes to working overtime. We say yes to taking on a project that we're not really up for. We do all this thing because we're like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's just this one time. Right? And naturally, I'm a pleaser. I want people to like me. I want people to, turn to me. How do I get 2 years down the road and suddenly feel completely overwhelmed and, not sort of respected or appreciated in the work environment because I'm always saying yes, and I'm looking around at how I'm working so much more than everyone else. Um, and then I start to be resentful. And here we go, I've become the victim. Now the pleaser has completely switched over into the victim because I'm feeling like I'm completely taken advantage of in this situation. This happens in love relationships, with friends, at work, all the time, but we have to look back and ask ourselves, did I ever take the chance to make clear boundaries? Is it really their fault that they asked for more when I constantly acted like I could always take more? Relationships are a two-way street, and I think that it's important for both parties to be able to acknowledge how they contribute to a scenario getting the way it gets. But yeah, we can only sort of focus on ourselves. Does anyone have anything to say about that, or any particular saboteurs that stand out for them, or maybe situations where their saboteur has kind of gotten in the way of a particular relationship or a friendship? I'd love some sharing and input if people want to. And I also want to acknowledge that all of these saboteurs have an equal superpower. We are not trying to demonize or villainize these aspects of ourselves. The tax master, right? Rather than being a stickler, this is somebody who, because they're really into knowing what the rules are and what's supposed to happen, They're really good at being a leader, making sure everybody stays on track, doing all these kind of things. And so asking, we're not saying that we should try to suppress this part of ourselves or that we want to get rid of this part of ourselves or reject that aspect of the self. No, we want to actually come to a place where we can be grateful to that part of ourselves and appreciate the fact that it's there trying to keep us safe, and yet not constantly allow them to get in the way of our relationships, but be in the driver's seat. There will be a short guided meditation at the end, Pichu, but actually, this is a webinar. It's not a guided meditation. I'll be doing the next guided meditation 2 weeks from now. So sorry about that, if that's what you thought was coming today. But yeah, there will be a short one at the end. Yeah, the victim makes me retreat and push people away for sure. We kind of get to that place where we feel like, hey, these people are not taking care of me. These people out there are not acknowledging me. They're not seeing how hard I'm working. They're not coming to show up and help me and, make sure that if I'm staying late, they're staying late and supporting me. And it's really easy for me to get into this place. But if I think back, was I really clear about my needs? Did I expect people to sort of be able to read my mind? Because, it felt challenging to be able to ask for that support. It's great to be kind-hearted. It's great to be a giving person. But when it turns into people-pleasing is when we're doing it even in situations where we don't really want to do it, there's a big difference in an act that comes from love and an act that comes from like obligation. And sure, there are some things we're obligated to, but we're trying to find the balance here so that we can feel better in our relationships, and also the people around us can feel better because there's a communication, there's an active, integration of everyone's needs in the scenario. When we talk about how do we set clear boundaries in personal, professional relationships without coming cross-road? That's a really good question. I think one thing that is very important is trying to be clear from the beginning of a relationship. I think that sometimes, obviously we're in a scenario where sometimes it's a bit down the road, but I want to talk first maybe about the beginning of a relationship. Let's say I've started a new job, I've been there for a couple months, and then I get asked to stay late and work on a project. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah, I'm up for that. And then if there's a second time, and it's within a week, kind of going, oh yeah, I'm up for staying late in general, but is this like a regular thing? Is it kind of part of the culture in this office to do it on a regular basis? Like, I just, my work-life balance is really important to me. Being clear, it might, for some people, they might be really uncomfortable with clear, direct communication, but it's actually going to really support us in the long run. Finding a way that we can, when we say something, make it always about us rather than about the other person. So I could say, oh, I can't believe I can't believe you're asking me to stay late again when I already stayed late last week. Or you should have known that my mother was sick and that was a really inappropriate time to ask me, or something. So when we direct it outwards and we direct it at the person, then that's oftentimes when it feels rude. When we get really clear about our boundaries, but we really keep it about us, this is about me, this is about what I'm comfortable with, this is about, what makes me feel safe, then hopefully we create an environment and we create a culture where other people also feel safe to be vulnerable and to be clear about their boundaries. Um, you know, it's it's convenient in sort of a corporate environment people are, if people are get comfortable with kind of workplace reality that is everyone overworking and everybody that it's really common to be sending emails back and forth at 9 o'clock at night still. And it's up to us, if we don't feel good about that, to at some point try to make a shift in the culture by acknowledging our boundaries. And we hope that other people are going to get on board and go, oh, I'm so glad that someone said something. But sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. And I hate to say it, but some people in life that you're going to meet are not going to respect your boundaries. But that doesn't mean that they're not your boundaries, I guess. Yeah, sometimes being a people pleaser can be very overwhelming. That's the thing. You're like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, and now I've said yes to this, and I've said yes to that. And then, like Ariane said before, there we go. Now I'm the victim and I'm just completely withdrawing. So I'm swinging back and forth between these things. And, we're always going to be who we are. We're always going to have the traits that we have. But getting more familiar with them, having these boxes to put them in, oh yeah, okay, that's my pleaser. I recognize that voice in this moment. And am I going to take the advice from it or not? We question advice that comes from our friends. Our friends would question advice that comes from us. So sometimes the advice that's coming from within, maybe we can think about it, question it. Is this really appropriate for this situation? Or is my pleaser just jumping in the driver's seat yet again? So the ultimate saboteur is the judge, the critic. And the way that this works is the critic is just as critical internal as it is external. So if you have someone in your life that's quite critical of you, it's probably twice as much how critical they are of themselves. And the process of kind of working through this is, it kind of always starts inward. Through working on the way we talk to ourselves will naturally support the way we talk to others. And through cultivating that compassion for the other, we in turn hopefully cultivate compassion for ourselves. So this is a reciprocal feedback loop that anywhere that we make change along the loop should support change through all the areas. So, that part of you that's up late at night worrying, that is full of self-doubt, that, always notices the problem rather than noticing the good things. That part is getting in the way of you living your most full and rich and joyful life. And it's also probably getting in the way for some of the other people in the environment around you. So, how do we manage to figure out what we like and what we don't like, and to acknowledge the positive and the negative that exists in life without being hypercritical and allowing this saboteur to get in the way of our relationships? And this is an ongoing question that we're going to have. And I think, compassion is a big part of it. The opposite of the judge is the caregiver. This is that kind of, very maternal energy, accepting imperfections for what they are, being able to kind of sit with it, to acknowledge that a mistake has been made without it having to kind of consume the entire day. Rather than critical, it's a feeling of curiosity. So if something goes wrong, okay, how can let's be curious. What happened? How can we avoid this in the future? If I am, if I'm acting in a certain way, if I'm noticing one of my saboteurs, Like when I'm sharing this information, it's not because I want people to go home and tear themselves apart and go, oh, I'm so vigilant. Oh, I'm such a people pleaser. No, it's to be able to go, oh, okay, that's maybe what's been getting me into trouble sometimes. It's because I have a tendency to be a people pleaser, which is probably because I was the oldest sibling in my family and my parents were really busy and I pretty much raised my siblings and was always, having to be a big boy before I was a big boy. Whatever that story is. We acknowledge that that exists. That's our life experience. It contributes to being who we are today. And the more I approach it from a curious light, then the less it's going to try to sort of hide itself from me or sort of trick me in order to keep playing this game of keeping me safe or, finding love in a way that maybe isn't benefiting me. So, yeah, this is about self-awareness. That's really what we're trying to cultivate here is more of an inner dialogue that we're not just immediately reacting to the situations around us. We're not just immediately reacting to our friends and to our loved ones when things come up, that we're able to kind of see the natural instinct coming up, that we're able to feel it for what it is. And, in the beginning, it might be like, oh, I noticed the next day. And then I noticed that evening, and then I noticed a couple hours later, and then I noticed 5 minutes later. And, over time, if we're kind of more conscious of this and we're trying to stay aware of it, then it can become something where we actually notice it while it's happening. Ways we can help with that is sometimes making a journal, noticing, okay, this thing came up between my friend and I today. Being able to sort of mark that down, acknowledge the parts that were, my saboteur getting in the way, kind of try to look at the situation from a few different angles. And, when we write something down, it really helps to imprint it in our conscious mind, right? So the more we're engaging with this in whatever way it is, then the more it's there and the more it's conscious and the more likely we are to be actually aware of it while it's happening. I have a controller saboteur and I've started to be able to see myself going, oh, but you've got to cut the mango like this. And actually just, it's about to come out of my mouth and I'm like, it's okay. They can cut the mango however they want. Yeah, there is a great Uprise module for learning to let go of unhelpful thoughts. And there's quite a few different modules that would be appropriate for this type of thing for sure. So a last thing that I wanted to put into this conversation is how do we really show up and really support the other people around us and the other people in our lives? And why does it feel different to talk to a counselor or a therapist than it does talking to friends? And so my little entry point into this is one thing that was taught to me in school was WAIT. And that stands for why am I talking? Is there a really important reason for what I'm going to say? And is it relevant to that person? And I'm talking about situations where there's a friend or somebody in your life who is coming and engaging in a conversation with consent because they have something that they really need to bring to the table, something they need to talk about. Maybe it's something that's come up between you. Maybe there's some kind of conflict or something like that. So if somebody brings something, how can I validate what they have to say? Am I listening? Am I being present? Am I distracted by other things? Am I distracted by how I'm about to defend myself? Is it possible for me to know that I have my own version of the story that is, I have a reason for doing what I did that I feel like makes sense, and still be able to validate what they say and their experience? How can I be supportive? And does this relationship work both ways? Is it going both ways? A lot of huge conflicts could be avoided if that person was able to be heard and validated in the beginning. Yeah, so that's kind of, you know, as a counselor, as a therapist, we're in a situation where we have to ask ourselves that all the time. Okay, what I'm about to say, is it in service of this person? And you're not a counselor, you're not a therapist in your situation with your friends, so you're not expected to be that way all the time. But these are just some of the little tips that we use to make somebody feel validated, supported, and heard when they've got something going on. So, you know, hopefully that might come in handy at some point. We're just gonna take a little moment to stretch our arms up in the air. We've talked about a lot of things, and I know everybody has a big day, and probably a lot of you are sitting behind your desk for most of the day. So before we wrap it up, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but let's twist side to side. Let's stretch one arm that way and another arm that way. Let's roll our shoulders, roll the neck. Take a couple deep breaths, feel the movement in your body, feel the shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Allow that attention to roll down into the hands, just focusing on the hands, maybe rub them together in front of you. Focus on that sensation in the hands and just allow that electric feeling to run up the arms, up the spine, into the scalp. Relaxing the forehead, behind the eyes, the temples, the jaw. Just connecting with the body to get present in this moment so you can feel grounded as you tackle the rest of your day. Thanks for joining, everyone. If there's anything left, any last little thing that anyone wants to say, you can pop it in the chat. Lovely to have all of you. Thanks for participating. And until next time. Lots of thanks. Very nice, very appreciated. Yep, so not next week, but the week after, I will be doing a meditation, a longer meditation. That's for you, Bichu. And all the best, everyone. Take care.